to you and your name.
My name is Dave Cornell. I work with Jim a little bit on the acquisition of off-road trail and trail protection, and I'm going to talk for a few minutes tonight.
Can't.
All right. See Jim Bronson nodding his head.
Yeah.
All right. My name is Dave Cornell. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the Chief Noonday Chapter. And as I was thinking about a title for this talk, the title that came to mind is Everything You Ever Have to Know About Pat Allen, because she was instrumental in everything we did. So I joined the NCTA in 1993. I think my number was 23. And in the course of time, I got to know Pat. She was a part-time executive director with the North Country Trail. Her offices were then in Grand Rapids. She was the second part-time executive director of the North Country Trail. Pat was instrumental in the starting of our chapter because she encouraged me to hold some meetings and see if I could gather some interested people to form a chapter. Our first meeting was either in, I think it was in March, but it could have been in April of 1997. We met at the Hope Township Hall. We did have some people that were interested in the trail. And then in May of 97, we had our first official meeting of the chapter. And Mick has all the records on this, but I think we had approximately 12 or 13 people there. And we formed a board and elected officers and then submitted our bylaws. And Bob Papp, who was then brand new as a full-time executive director of the North Country Trail, accepted our bylaws and sent us a letter welcoming us to the NCTA. There are a lot of people that were very instrumental in the beginning of our group. I'm going to tell some stories about those people, and usually I can see who's here, but I'm going to tell a lot of stories about people who aren't here. Bob Benham was our first treasurer and vice president, very, very active. And he was also the guy that was always out beating the bush to raise more money. We would have our meetings at the Berry Township Hall, and Bob Benham, would always sit on my right-hand side. And many times when these meetings were held, he'd hand me something. It might be a shirt, it might be a t-shirt, it might be a hat, but it was something he wanted me to put on because he was going to sell it to the rest of the members. I have with me a hat. Now this hat says in large letters, NCTA, and it's got a totem pole. I don't know why the totem pole. And then on the back it had Chief Noonday, but he wanted me to pay him $20 for this hat. I have a large selection of hats, t-shirts, jackets, all courtesy of Bob Benham and his fundraising efforts. One of the things we worked so hard at the beginning is to raise money to do the things we wanted to do. And one of the things I always remember about Pat Allen, she was at all the meetings I've mentioned before, but in the first year, and I don't know the exact date, Pat Allen sent us some shares of Bell South. We sold them. And after that time, we were on easy street. We had money. We never had to worry about money again. And many times over the years, as the membership has grown, I've written to Pat and said, Pat, here's where we are today. And I know because I've seen her a couple of times that she's very proud of what we've done with this chapter. And all of you have done in this chapter. I'm no longer very active in it. I'm going to talk a little bit about the course of events during the first couple of years, but those events that I just highlighted are the beginning of the chapter. As the chapter grew, our first real goals were centered around the acquisition of getting the right to walk over, call it whatever you want, memorandums of understanding, easements or whatever, to get across land that we knew we could get across. Kellogg Forest, Kellogg Biological Station, Yankee Springs, Berry State Game Area, etc. The list goes on. So this first couple of years, we really concentrated so hard in building the trail across those lands. And Ron Hutchinson owned some land just outside of Augusta, which now the Park Service owns, thank the good Lord. And Bill Minke would come down and give us trail building sessions, talk to us about gradients and how to build trail, etc. And then he eventually came and certified some trail that we had constructed, which was always a red letter day for us. Over the years, Bill spent a lot of time in our bailiwick because he'd done the first rough map of the course of the trail, not a fine map, but just a general course as where the trail could go in the counties that we serve. When Chief Noonday was formed, we knew we were going to be putting trail across Calhoun County, Kalamazoo County, Berry County, but we reserved for ourselves the ability to put land across some other counties in the event that we strayed off of the land, off of the area that Bill had highlighted where he wanted us to go. We never did stray off those areas. We stayed in those counties, the same counties we have today. So I'm going to open this up for questions and let you ask questions or make comments about anything that I've just said. And I'll let Jane handle the questions and monitor the conversation.
So are there whoops, I'm going to unmute everybody. So does anybody have a question?
Are they talking?
Is anybody, Eric, you got a question?
I do.
All
So,
right.
where did Chief Noonday come as the name of our chapter? I mean, I know who he is and what he is, but how did that come up?
We had a number of names, and I can't tell you, Eric, who submitted those names, but we had a number of names submitted, and there was a lot of discussion. I think Pat was part of that discussion also, but we did select Chief Noonday, and it was, I think, a unanimous choice.
I will just say that I kept my membership in this chapter, even though I've lived in 2 other counties, but I felt the promise was there, and it obviously was. Thank you.
Well, we wouldn't be here without you, Pat.
Okay.
You did his gravesite too.
Well, my lovely wife just pointed out that before the Historical Commission decorated Chief Noonday's gravesite, we had a cross on it.
Ruth, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious how typical it is to share trails and if there are any parts of our trail that we have shared with someone else rather than the reverse.
So when we started out, the National Park Service, almost always in the form of Bill Minke, had crafted memorandums of understanding with the various agencies that allowed us to use their trail. And all of those memorandums of understanding provided that it was to be a hiking trail. It was in large part built by the Park Service and chapters, and it was designated as a hiking trail. I remember when Pat Allen and I went up to Manistee National Forest, we had a meeting with them, and they said, we're going to open up to a section of it open to bikes and other uses because of the fact that there's just more bike usage than there is hikers. And we went up and argued about that, but politically, they said, we don't have any choice. There's just too many people that want to use the bikes on this trail. So to answer your question specifically, yes, we have worked with others to allow them to use our trail. Other than hunter land, where there's trails specifically designed for hunters, I don't think we've ever used anybody else's trail.
Okay. I'm just aware that on Norris, if you go towards Circle Pine, it's partly horse trail and partly hiking trail.
Yep, that was originally all hunter land trail, I believe, or horse trail on Berry State Game Area, and we did use that after other uses had already existed.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Jim Bronson.
Dave, how easy was it to get MOUs from places, well, the DNR in general, like the game area in Yankee Springs in the early days? Were they pretty receptive to the trail, or did it take a while?
The first MOU that Chief Noonday really got involved in was the one with KBS, Michigan State University. And it came easy. You know them people, you know the people as well as I, even you know them better than I do. The people associated with Michigan State University. For those that don't know, Bill or Jim was associated with MSU. We're attuned to trails and we're knowledgeable about trails, and it didn't take very long at all. The MOUs after that were more difficult. And the reason they were more difficult didn't have anything to do with the land use managers. It had to do with us. We wanted our own separate trail. We didn't want to use trail that was being used by others. And that was something that they didn't want to have happen. They didn't want more trails on their land. They wanted fewer. And I knew where they were coming from, and so did everybody else, but that was a problem. So the other MOUs came a little bit more, were more difficult, but they all eventually happened.
Chris.
And I'm not muted. So Dave, so from your experiences over the years, how do you think things have changed? The needs of the chapter have changed over time? Or volunteers in general?
All right. My interest, and good question, but my interest has always been in trail protection. I can't speak for the funding of the chapter because it just seemed like we were always able to scrimp and make enough money to do the things we had to do. But trail protection, the actual acquisition of land or easements, is something that has not progressed as fast as I'd like to have it go. I understand the reasons why. It's not in the expertise wheelhouse of our chapter members. It's also something that's a long-term, long-pole deal. Our chapter is so proud of the fact that we put together the Hutchinson purchase, and thanks to the Park Service for that. But we have to do better in dealing with land and acquisition funds. We have to do better with learning how, along with the Park Service, to acquire lands and easements. That's our biggest weakness.
Thank you.
Questions? Oh, Chris again, yes.
Well, since nobody jumped right up, so kind of conversely, how do you think things are better now than they may have been in the past, if at all?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of things that are much better. Number one, when we started out, Chris, we had very little expertise in trail building and trail maintenance. Thanks to the Park Service and the North Country Trail Association, we became better and better at that. The funding capabilities of the North Country Trail vis-a-vis our chapter, Chief Noonday, are better than they've ever been. We have fewer difficulties. Training, if we need training anywhere, it is in dealing with landowners, and we're so much better at that now. Jim Bronson is magnificent. We're so much better than that than we've ever been before. That's a huge strength for us. I think I could go on, but those are the highlights.
Thank you.
Sure.
Nick,
Dave, it's Larry Hawkins.
Yeah.
You seem want to talk about yourself very much. So I wonder, since a lot of the people that are on tonight are pretty much newbies to the trail, if you could spend a little time on some of the heroes that you've known. I think particularly of Bill Menke. I think he's somebody that would bear a little bit longer mention as one of the, real heroes of the North Country Trail.
Sure. The problem is, if you get into talking about individuals, you're going to forget somebody, and that I don't want to do. So I will talk a little bit about Bill. We spent a lot of time together down here in Chief Noonday country, but then he and I became hiking partners, and I think we hiked quite a bit in every state along the North Country Trailway. He is as dedicated a trail building professional as you will ever find. He knows every piece of equipment. Every day when we were hiking, he would tell me, he would say, Dave, we're going to have a fire tonight. We'll sit around and talk. And about 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, I'd go to bed because I had the fire going, but he'd be sitting there making notes about the trail we crossed that day. Something he just did every day. There are others. I think about Ron Hutchinson. I know we bought the land from him, but what a hero he was for us, because he was constantly going with me to meet other landowners. I have a great picture of him and Dr. Sackett, where he went up to Dr. Sackett and said, these are good guys. And pretty soon we were really good friends with Dr. Sackett, and he let us go across his land. He did it with others. He showed up at township board meetings. He had nothing to gain. He just showed up because he wanted to support, and he would always talk to us. I think of all the people associated with KBS over the years, at Kellogg Forest, Greg at the Kellogg Forest, what a great guy he was for the trail. He constantly was fighting for us with other landowners. I remember he went out with me once. He had me in the middle of this field, and he says, how does this look to you? We were standing about 8 feet away from a pivot irrigation stand, and I said, not too good. But he got us on the land. If we wanted to be there, he did it. Others, I think of Lynn Waldron. What a great guy. He was a civil engineer. I think he's the only one that had a number lower than mine with the North Country Trail. He engineered the placement of a bridge on KBS, something we should be very proud about still today. That's the most magnificent bridge. It's got right at the head of it on the side. There were others. I know some, but those are a few of the people I consider to be heroes.
so good, our internet connection. Patsy, do you have anything, some of the heroes that maybe you could help Dave with somebody from our chapter or other people that you were aware of, you worked with?
Who are you asking?
You,
Oh, me? Oh,
I'm asking you.
Bad Al.
Yes.
well, I've just had all of these early experiences. My number on the member list is number 3. So I'm probably the longest term person. But the very first person who started an end-to-end hike, Carolyn Hoffman, I went and hiked with her for a day, and I just have had periodic things that come up, that I've met and enjoyed it all. So it's been a pleasure to know Dave for so long and the rest of you. So thank you. So thank you, though.
Doesn't sound like mine. Oh, thank you.
I hope it's not mine.
It's not mine.
That's hers.
Thank you. How about Mick? You had a question before your brother.
Actually, it wasn't a question. It was an addition to Dave's answer to Chris's question. I think one of the things that has gotten even better in the 15 years that I've been associated with Chief Noonday is the availability and willingness of volunteers that never ceases to amaze me. For example, when I have to recruit new adopters, almost invariably, I very quickly get more than I can even use. And we've run into this, in the response to the workday projects that we have. I think the volunteerism is definitely something that has grown with time, in a time with the chapter. One thing I wanted to add too, Pat Allen may be number 3 in the history of the NCTA, but she is number 1 in Chief Noonday. She is the senior member of Chief Noonday Chapter in terms of how long she has been a member of the association. She was a member a good 15 years before Chief Noonday even existed.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Thank you.
Chris.
So I just wanted to add on to what Mick said. So, you made such a great point, and I'm so happy to hear about, the response you're getting from the volunteers, that you have so many dedicated and motivated people out there to help you. So just wanted to take this opportunity to plug for the National Park Service. You see a couple new faces on here that some of you haven't probably seen before. We've got another new face that you haven't seen before. And my point that I'm want to make is that the National Park Service is working very hard to follow suit, to staff up and to provide better services and more assistance than we've ever been able to provide in the past. So much talk about all the things that Bill Menke did for the trail and continues to do for the trail. Some of what we're doing now is going to be different than when Bill was the trail manager. But across the board, the National Park Service is really trying to step up to meet that challenge and to open new doors and really start moving the needle even further. So it's great to be able to do that along with the volunteerism that you've been experiencing.
More questions? I was just checking the chat box to see if anybody had anything in the chat box. And I understand Kimberly, who we don't see, is a new volunteer. Kimberly, can you unmute yourself?
I can. How are you?
Okay. Where do you live?
I live in Milford, but the reason why I'm keeping mute is because I happen to have 9 children and they're all very loud.
How do you have time to volunteer, Kimberly?
They come with me. A lot of them backpacking with me. My oldest is older. He's 22. My youngest is 2. However, he does have a pack. It's just very small.
I can't wait to meet you.
Oh, me either. Yeah, to be able to get out of the house here. I had to get them all back into school this week, so it was a little bit of a hassle, but it'll all settle down pretty quickly.
Well, glad to have you, Kimberly.
Absolutely.
Anybody? Oh, here we have Eric. Eric has a question.
Dave, I just want to know how Pat knew to come to you to get you roped into this whole thing. What's your background that drew her to you?
So Jan and I used to do some hiking in we belonged to a group in Grand Rapids before the NCTA started out. So we were hiking up in Grand Rapids. I retired in '93 and we started hiking with a group up there, and just got to know Pat because she was along in some of these things. And then Pat arranged a time for me to sit down with her and several others. And I don't remember but all people from the Park Service. And the idea was hatched in Pat's mind, believe me, in Pat's mind, to form a chapter in southwestern Michigan. And she's the one that started the ball rolling. She picked on me, Eric, I think, because she saw my interest in hiking.
Yes.
And I was hiking the Appalachian Trail at the time. And she saw my interest. I think when I joined the North Country Trail, they had a little place where you could list your interests, and I listed my interest in working with landowners and trail protection. So she got on to me and stayed on me, and she was a constant source of inspiration, because she would always pat me on the back, say, "Way to go, Dave, way to go."
Well, I'm still trying to do things, and I'm looking at issues now of diversity and still recruiting people for the trail. So I'm not giving up on it. Thank you, Dave.
You know, the truth is, if you look at the history of trails in Southwest Michigan, you will run across Pat Allen's name in almost every instance. I was talking to somebody on the White Pine Trail one day, and I mentioned her name, and there were several hikers there, and they all knew Pat Allen. So I'm proud of the fact that she's got a lot of our heritage, but she's got a lot of heritage with every trail in Southwest Michigan.
Thank you.
So does
Thank you,
anyone
Dave.
else?
I guess the other question, if I can ask, the other question I have is just how, I don't know the trail history well enough, not necessarily Chief Noonday, but did they know it was going to come through Barry and Kalamazoo in Calhoun County when they set it up? Or was that just totally up in the air for anybody to grab?
You want me to continue talking?
Yeah.
So when we started out, Eric, we were presented with a map with a grayed out, I'm going to say it's 15-mile wide path all the way from the bridge to Ohio. And that path was, as far as I know, prepared by Bill Minke. And it was based upon this theory of connecting bright lights or stars or whatever you want to say. So he had drawn the lines that connected the outside parameters of this trail on the basis of things we should see. KBS was on there, Berry State Game Area, Yankee Springs. So this swath ran through the state of Michigan, and he had given a lot of thought as to areas within that swath that we should work with. And so that's just exactly what we did. We started working with areas within the swath and then trying to connect those lights. But given the Park Service credit, they're the ones that did the homework, the groundwork, and started us on our way.
Thanks, that helps.
It was the Park Service. There was Tom Gilbert and the Bureau of Outdoor Recreation.
Yep.
And they were in contact with the people from the original Father Trail, if you will, the Appalachian Trail. And it kind of started with that kind of influence.
Sometime you're going to have to get Pat Allen to give one of these talks.
I guess. Nick, you had another question?
Well, Pat actually already answered it. I was going to ask Dave about Tom Gilbert's role in the early stages along with Bill Minke that he was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Bill, and as you know, Tom and Bill were the best of friends, still are. And I remember the meeting where we were, Bob Papp and I and Bill Menke and Tom Gilbert were sitting around the table. We were trading horses trying to get Bill Menke to come with the North Country Trail Service, which North Country Trail Association, which we did, and which worked out just perfect. It worked out well for him, but man, did it work out well for us.
Okay, any other quick questions or comments before?
I leave.
Okay, yeah. Any quick ones before we get to our business? Of course, anybody can always leave. You know how to do it very gracefully. You just shut yourself off. So, if anyone would like to leave, that's okay. You know how it is. Business is business. And we have some good things to talk about tonight, but if you can't stay, we thank you for coming and learning, and I learned a lot about Chief Noonday, so I'm glad that we could know a little bit about our heritage. You know, we jump in and then never know exactly, because I keep saying, how could it happen so quickly when it takes us 10 years to get one little piece off road? You know, anyway.
Dave, did you mention that the chapter cleared around Chief Noonday's stone and put a stone there?
No, we didn't do that.
Oh, I thought you
No,
did.
Historical Society.
Okay, so we thank
See ya.
Dave for coming, and we hope to see you next year.
All right.